1, 2, 1, 2. Hello and welcome to the City Explorer. My name's Matt and I'll be your guide for the next hour. Due to COVID regulations, we are not a hop-on, hop-off service at the moment, so unfortunately you will have to stay with me for the entire duration. Your driver is Gary, so you can say hello to Gary if you want. Ah, a friendly bunch. They wouldn't say hello to him yesterday. We're coming out onto the dock road now. 7.5 miles long, the dock road. This particular bit of it is called Wapping, and on your left you've got the Salt House dock, built on the site of an old salt works that was there in the 1700s. Of course, the whole area is referred to as the Albert dock because of the interior dock that you can see just on the other side of the bridge there. The Albert dock is where you'll find the Tate Gallery, the Maritime and Slavery Museum, and it's also where Richard and Judy used to do This Morning back in Richard Madeley's shoplifting days, if anybody remembers that. Yeah, he did, of course, simply forget to pay for that bottle of red wine. On your left, you've got the police station here, which some of you may end up staying the night in tonight. I don't know whether you've got plans that may take you down that road. But some of the more law-abiding amongst you may end up meeting someone and end up back at the Hilton Hotel there. There you go, you got the Hilton Hotel. It's built on the site of the world's first ever commercial wet dock, the remains of which are still beneath the Hilton Hotel. The reason there was a dock so far inland is because the river used to go inland. The river used to flow right into the middle of the city. It was what the Pool of Liverpool was known as. Up until they started building the docks, Liverpool was a very small fishing town, and it was only then that we started needing a massive workforce. And that workforce tended not to come from the rest of England. We had the workforce from all over the world, although mostly from the rest of the British Isles. They did come from much further afield as well. For instance, on your right, this red brick building here is an old Swedish church. It's Gustav Adolf's Kirke. Okay, so that is the Swedish church that we had here in the 1800s. It's still a Nordic centre to this day. We had lots of people coming in from Scandinavia, and the Norwegians who came into the city in particular brought with them a dish called lobscouse. Lobscouse is a stew made from potatoes, carrots and whatever meat you can get hold of, and it's served up with cooked beetroot or red cabbage. It became a very popular dish as soon as it came here to Liverpool, and it's still a very popular dish to this day. But we like to abbreviate everything here, so instead of calling it lobscouse, we just called it scouse, and that is how we came to be known as Scousers, because of the popularity that is. So the gist of that very long-winded story I've just told you is that we are named after a Norwegian stew. There you go. Now, if you do wish to sample that stew, there are many places that will do you a bowl of it today. Lots of cafes and restaurants around town will do you a bowl of scouse. And Gary, your driver, has a pan of scouse on in the house at the moment and said that anyone is welcome back to his later for a bowl of it. So there you go. Take him up on the offer. Coming up on your left, you've got one of the many pieces of public art that we have in this area, known as the Baltic Triangle. On your left, you've got the green wings that people like to stand in the middle of to make them appear to be an angel. So there you go. It's actually meant to be the liver bird's wings. So there you go. You can become a liver bird by standing in between them. On your right, coming up, you will see a bowland hare stood on what they call the Baltic flint. So this piece of artwork changes a lot. But facing the bowland hare on the other side, you'll see it now if you look back, is a mural of Jurgen Klopp there. Jurgen Klopp is, of course, the Liverpool Football Club manager. Liverpool is a football-mad city, so they're absolutely mental for football here in the city of Liverpool. As a result, there's lots of murals around town of various football players. Now, on your right, you've got the Canton Furnace. This is obviously an old warehouse, as is this on your left, as in most of the buildings around here. But nowadays, they have bars and restaurants and practice places for fans just on the building on your left, and also lots of sort of artist spaces as well, where they do their paintings and the sculptures and things like that. So it's a bit of an artsy area of town, but it's also, you know, a very entertaining bit of town. They do Bongo's Bingo in this place on the right. I don't know whether you've ever heard of Bongo's Bingo. It's like a mix between dance music and bingo. You know, those two things have come together at last. And, you know, whenever anyone calls house, they jump on the tables and start dancing and that. Now, Bongo's Bingo you can get everywhere because it tours, but this is where it started here, so the home of Bongo's Bingo on your right. Now on the other side of the road just here, this is a big main road that we're about to come out onto. You can already see this brewery building just on the other side there. It's the Cairns Brewery, which opened in 1850. Fortunately, it closed as a brewery in 2013, and this is now the brewery village. In the middle of this building there is a marketplace called the Baltic Market, and there's lots of bars and restaurants and things of that nature around here. They've got the Peaky Blinders bar in there, which is a bar dedicated to the TV series Peaky Blinders, if you're into that. There's also a Yellow Submarine, which is also a pub, and you can go and sit on the Yellow Submarine itself and get wellied. So there you go. Now we're coming up towards an area where it's, you know, interesting to think about the different immigrant communities that lived in Liverpool. For instance, to the right of us is Dingle, where the Welsh generally lived. So lots of Welsh families ended up living in the Dingle area. They've even got streets in the Dingle, which are known as the Welsh Streets, all named after small Welsh villages. At the top of the hill there is Toxteth, L8, Liverpool 8, where people from all over the world have settled over the years, and it's still a very multicultural area to this day. Now, if you get to the other side of town, you end up in North Liverpool, which is where the Irish settled after the potato famine of the 1840s. Now, the Irish had been coming here for a long time before that. That's just the first time they came en masse. But they reckon the Irish might have been coming into the city for about 5,000 years, which seems incredible. But we have 5,000-year-old stones in Calderstones Park, the Calder Stones, which are about 4 miles from here, and they have markings on them that you only otherwise find in Ireland. So the Irish have always been fond of Liverpool, it would seem. But sometimes the effect of the Irish on the culture of Liverpool overshadows that of other cultures. For instance, this wedding house just in front of us was originally the Bank of North and South Wales. So as I say, that Welsh population was massive and intrinsic to changing the accent in Liverpool, things like that. Obviously the Irish accent is important. Oh, surely the Welsh gave us the that we have in our accents. So if we have any Welsh on board, I would like to thank you for making it impossible for me to say that I'm going to the bank or the docks or to get some chicken without spitting over everyone when I speak to them. Do we have any Welsh on board actually? Are there any no Welsh people on board? But yeah, so the Welsh, the Irish, the Scottish had a major impact on the city of Liverpool because they came here for work at one point. And as a result we ended up with a very different accent to the rest of what was then Lancashire. Liverpool was Lancashire right up until about 1974. It's not Lancashire anymore, it's Merseyside these days. But going back 100, maybe 150 years, we would have had a similar accent to the rest of Lancashire. We would have been, I don't know, is it E-by-Gum Lancashire? Or is that Yorkshire? I always get mixed up. That's Yorkshire E-by-Gum, isn't it? Yeah, but we would have had a Lancashire accent up until, you know, not long ago. It's only that mass immigration that changed the accent. For instance, you had the Chinese coming in from the 1830s. Look on your left there, and you can see a massive Chinese arch donated by Shanghai in the year 2000 to celebrate the millennium. There's 200 dragons depicted on the arch, 13 of which are pregnant. Apparently that's good luck. So there you go, that's a Chinese arch. As I say, the Chinese have been coming here since the 1830s. I was doing my family tree, and my family came, or at least one part of it, from Ireland in about 1900. So the Chinese families in Liverpool have been here longer than my family have, let's put it that way. Now all on your left here, we've got the old rope walks. These very long roads were dedicated to the making of rope. That's how important the docks were. Obviously you need a lot of rope on docks, so you need a lot of streets dedicated to the making of rope. The reason they're so long, these roads, is because they would lay the rope out while they were making it. So basically each of these roads on the left of us is technically the length of a piece of rope. So they're like big rulers. Now one of the old rope walks has become a very popular place for eating and drinking, especially during this COVID nightmare, because it's largely pedestrianised. I'll show you it now. It's on your left. This is Bold Street, and it always looks like there's a festival going on when you look down here, because of all the different outside bars and restaurants and things. So go there if you're looking for some outside dining today. But look to your right now and you will see St. Luke's Church. Now St. Luke's is known as the bombed out church. This was hit by a German incendiary device in the May Blitz of 1941, and that device completely destroyed the inside of the church and left the outside completely unharmed. This is just the shell of the church that you're looking at here. It was left there as a memorial to all those who lost their lives during the Liverpool Blitz. Thousands died here in Liverpool. We have a big film industry connection in Liverpool. We have a whole office dedicated at the council to liaison with filmmakers, because they use streets such as this for costume dramas. So things like Peaky Blinders, seems like I'm mentioning Peaky Blinders an awful lot today. Things like Peaky Blinders are filmed in this area. Also like the Jeremy Brett, Sherlock Holmes in the 80s, things like that. If you look to your right now, you can see number 62, which has got this pyramid on top of it. Now number 62 is actually the birthplace of William Gladstone, who was 4 times Prime Minister during Queen Victoria's reign. So that was Gladstone's old gaff there. But these would have been, you know, rich people's houses, slave traders, shipping merchants. All of the big rich people and powerful people of Liverpool would have lived here back when Liverpool was one of the richest places in the world. Hardly anyone lives here anymore though. Most of the buildings are too expensive for people to just have as homes. And as a result, it's become big with the plastic surgery industry. So this is where you come for your nips and tucks, your wrinkle relaxation. You can go in one end looking 80 and come out the other looking 18. So there you go. Now the cathedral's around here somewhere, have a little look out for it. You don't want to miss it. There it is on your right. It's the Anglican Cathedral, designed by Giles Gilbert Scott. Giles Gilbert Scott was only 22 years old when he designed this cathedral. He lived to be 80 and he never saw it completed. It took 74 years to build this cathedral. It wasn't finished officially until 1978. Now you can see there's a bit of scaffolding up near the top at the moment, and that is because they've been having people abseiling down it. Now they were doing it yesterday, I don't know whether they're doing it today again, but people do it for charity generally. They'll get people to sponsor them to come down the front of it. I don't think you could pay me enough money to go down the front of that. Does anyone else fancy it? Anyone fancy a bit of abseiling today? Now Giles Gilbert Scott, who designed the cathedral, also designed a red telephone box that we used to see all over Britain. And there is an example of a red telephone box within the cathedral. It's his smallest design within his largest design. The cathedral is free to enter, by the way, although, you know, check up on the internet for availability for, you know, times to go in and things like that. But most of our public buildings are completely free to enter. We're turning left now onto Hoe Street. Hoe Street is the only street in the world with a cathedral at both ends. There's another cathedral at the other end here. Now the buildings to your left all make up part of LIPA, which is the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts and International Stage School. This building on your left was the old College of Arts back when John Lennon attended it in the late 1950s. When Lennon was here, McCartney and Harrison were next door in the building with the pillars, because that was their school. That's where McCartney and Harrison went, the Liverpool Institute. Also the school of Arthur Askew, the comedian, who probably no one remembers. On your right, oh some people do, on your right is Faulkner Street there, often used in costume dramas. That's probably the one that's most filmed, to tell you the truth. And then on your left you've got Hoe Street Hotel, and below it the London Carriage Works, which is a very fancy hotel, restaurant you could say. That's where Liverpool Football Club meets up before a big game, so you will see Liverpool supporters outside trying to get their autographs and things. On your right is the Philharmonic Hall itself, which is where all the classical music and things take place here in Liverpool. And then on the other side of the traffic lights here, look at this sandstone building over here. This is the Philharmonic Dining Rooms. It's a grade 1 listed pub, okay? Now, you don't really get grade 1 listed pubs. This is quite a rarity. It's said by Camera magazine, which is the Campaign for Real Ale magazine, to be the most ornate pub in Britain. Now, it's not just the outside that's ornate, but as you can see, it is very much so. The inside is absolutely spectacular as well. It's most famous though for its toilets, the men's toilets in particular, because the urinals in here are the original Victorian urinals made from a very special and very rare marble. Tourists come from all over the world to take photographs of the urinals in the men's toilets, which can be awkward if you're using them at the time. But we are an equal opportunity city in Liverpool, so any ladies who wish to visit the men's urinals, you simply have to ask a member of staff to escort you in to make sure that no gentlemen are using them at the time. Now I'm going to stick my neck out here and say that this is the classy end of town. I reckon it is anyway. It's classier than the other end. The other end's fun. This end's classy. There's lots of bars and restaurants around here. You can see all these little fancy, you know, I've never been in these. I'm not very classy. You've got like the Printworks and all these little sort of nice looking restaurants. And then you've got the Everyman Theatre. Beautiful, you know, the hub of culture in the city, which is also a bar and bistro as well. So lots going for Hope Street if you're looking for maybe a little quieter, you know, drink. If you want a big crazy drink, go down Matthew Street, which is where the Cabin Club is, and you know, all the people with the inflatable thingy bobs. Now just in front of us we've got the Catholic Cathedral. It's the second of the two cathedrals you're going to see, and easily the more modern looking, although it actually opened 10 years before the other one was finished. Now that makes it seem like this is the newer. It's not quite as simple as that though, because the other one they were using already before they finished it. They'd already started using the other one. But it is a very unusual design, and not to everyone's taste. I'm going to be upfront about it. I know that a lot of people don't like it, for the simple fact that I've been doing this job long enough to see people go, ooh, I don't like that. Ooh, that's not very nice. Ooh, that's not what a cathedral should look like. Now, I actually think it looks great. I think it's a very unusual, very unique design. But what I will say is that if you're one of those people who doesn't think it looks nice, go inside anyway, because it's absolutely stunning inside. And you see all that stained glass at the top. On a sunny day like today, it streams, the sun streams through that glass and creates a beautiful kaleidoscope of colour inside. So that only happens about 2 or 3 times a year. So, you know, make the most of it. You don't get very many sunny days here in Liverpool. There's an external bell tower here as well. The reason the bells are external is because they'd shatter all that glass if they were to ring inside. There's 4 bells, known as Matthew, Mark, Luke and John officially, although locally they're known as John, Paul, George and Ringo. The largest bell is cracked and slightly out of tune, and from that you're supposed to guess which of the Beatles it's named after. Ringo. Ringo. Okay, it is a very modern design, I'll give you that, you know, not very traditional. But on the spot where it stands should be a much more traditional cathedral, because they did start building a completely different cathedral on this site in the 1930s. To a design by a very famous architect called Edwin Lutyens. This is a complete overhaul, a completely different design by Frederick Gibbard, although you do see bits of Lutyens' design around and about it if we go around the corner in a minute. When we get around the corner I'll show you the only bit they finished of that original design. Some people say it would have been the largest cathedral in the world. It definitely would have been one of the largest cathedrals in the world. Just in front of us, this red brick building that you can see is the Victoria Gallery and Museum, but originally this was the main building of the University of Liverpool, and it is where the term red brick university comes from. So if you went to a red brick, this was the reason your university was called a red brick, named after this. Now it's a great little museum. It's got an amazing exhibit inside of the history of false teeth. If anybody's interested in the history of false teeth, it's a fascinating subject. On your left, this bit with the pyramids, this is the Lutyens Cathedral. That's all they built of it. They got this made and then they ran out of money. So the rest of it is a completely different design. This is the crypt, and you can still visit the inside of the Lutyens crypt. And once a year they use it for student examinations and a beer festival. Not at the same time, different. But the cathedral itself is officially called the Metropolitan Cathedral of Christ the King, Liverpool. But in Liverpool they just refer to it as Paddy's Wigwam. That's because it looks a bit like a wigwam, and we have so many Irish Catholics in the area, so it's Paddy's Wigwam. So we have 3 universities in Liverpool, and as a result we have about 60 to 70,000 students in the city at any one time. We have a population of less than 500,000, so as you can imagine, that many students turning up brings an awful lot to our economy. There are bars in town that survive on the patronage of students alone, Although it's not just booze that they buy. Occasionally they will buy books and food, clothes, things like that as well. So it is great to have them here. Now if you do wish to see the students in their natural habitat being the bars and clubs of Liverpool, the best nights to see them are a Friday or a Saturday night, or a Sunday night, or a Monday night, or a Tuesday night, or a Wednesday night, or a Thursday night. They're all good nights to see the students out and about. So go student spotting. You can tell which ones are the students because they've still got hope in their eyes. This on your left is the John Moores University building, the Redmonds building, the media centre. John Moores, does anyone remember Littlewoods Pools and Spot the Ball? That was John Moores, he was the guy who did that. If you're under 35 or not from Britain, you won't have a clue what I'm talking about there. You'll have to Google it, I'm afraid, because we're moving on now to the Adelphi Hotel, which is coming up on your right. Is anybody staying at the Adelphi Hotel at the moment? Some people at the back. This is the second trip round. We've had victims of the Adelphi on board. I'm only joking. This is, of course, a fabulous hotel and has been since 1912 when it opened. It's the third Adelphi to stand on the exact same spot. First Adelphi was there in 1829. They've got an anime festival on today. So if you want to dress up as Japanese cartoon characters, this is the day for you. Anyone into that type of thing? Japanese cartoon characters? No? Well, they're all there dressed as them anyway today. But lots of people have stayed in the Adelphi Hotel over the years, lots of famous people. So not just the lady at the back, but lots of famous people. Frank Sinatra, Laurel and Hardy, Charlie Chaplin, Winston Churchill, Bob Dylan, Benny from Crossroads. Pretty much just everyone who was anyone in the 20th century stayed at the Adelphi Hotel at some point or other. So there's a lot of history here. It was, popular for its turtle soup at one time, and they would have live turtles, actually on site. And somebody, I don't know, I have to look into this to make sure it's true, but somebody tried telling me that the vat they kept the turtles in is now the swimming pool. And I'm not sure that's true, so I'll have to check me facts on that one. But it's a good story. Now just in front of us, the big white building at the bottom of the street, is Lewis's department store. Now, most people when they think of Lewis's think of John Lewis. This was a completely different company owned by a fella called David Lewis, but it did the same job. It used to be a big department store basically. Now if you're from the north of England or Scotland, you probably had the Lewis's in your hometown as well. They didn't have them so much in the south, but the rest of the north had them. Now Lewis's department store dates back to the 1850s, so this was an extremely old department store. And it's the first place that had a Santa's grotto, believe it or not. So this is the first Santa's grotto here. Now you can see a naked man at the front of it. Has everyone spotted him? He's just over there, blimey days, there he is. Now he was put there after they rebuilt the building after the Second World War, because a lot of the building was heavily damaged. And they put the naked man there to represent Liverpool rising from the ashes of the Second World War. Now I'm not entirely sure how a naked man represents anything of the sort, but there you go. He's known as Liverpool Resurgent officially. Hopefully he's known as Dickie Lewis. You can see both cathedrals if you look out to your right now, or in a minute you will anyway. You can see the top of the Catholic cathedral there with the spikes which are said to represent the crown of thorns that Jesus was made to wear. And then on the other side you can see the Anglican cathedral there as well, a little bit back from us now. If you look to your left over the other side of this wall, you are looking down into Lime Street Station. Lime Street Station is the oldest working terminal station anywhere in the world. The passenger line between Liverpool and Manchester is the first purpose-built passenger line anywhere in the world. I have to be very careful with my wording there. I was telling that story without saying purpose-built. I said it was the very first passenger line anywhere in the world. And a woman put her phone right in my face. She's just proper shoved it in my face. And I had to adjust, and it turned out she was showing me the Wikipedia page for the Stockton-Darlington line. Do we have anyone from the northeast on board? Yeah. So the Stockton-Darlington line is older than ours, but ours was the first built just for passengers. So, take that, Stockton. That's all I can say. So we're going to turn left now onto London Road. London Road, it's the most auspicious bit of Liverpool, let's put it this way. But it gives you, a real taste of the city and takes us down towards these beautiful Victorian buildings at the bottom. Oh, there's one of our guides there, Mr. Paul McCombs. He's doing his Peaky Blinders tour, I think. Now, as I said before, Peaky Blinders is set in the Midlands, but filmed largely in Liverpool. And they even do tours just showing you the different bits where Peaky Blinders is filmed. Very popular programme. I've never watched it myself. Well, there you go. So you got lots of these buildings around here. You got these beautiful museum, gallery, all that stuff over there, but we'll talk about that a bit later on. First of all, if you look to your left, you've got the Empire Theatre. This is the last place the Beatles played together in Liverpool back in 1965. And on your right, you've got the spectacular St. George's Hall. St. George's Hall opened in 1854, designed by Harvey Lonsdale Elms, and it is a stunning building with a concert hall and law courts. The law courts are no longer used, but they are accessible to the public. You can go and have a look at them. Nowadays, it's where they have a registry office, where they register births, deaths and marriage. And you can often see people making the greatest decision of their lives just at the top of these steps here. Now, you might be wondering why that statue is all dressed up in the middle of the steps. And I'm wondering that as well, to tell you the truth. It's Disraeli. Disraeli was the Prime Minister, of course, and they've dressed him up. It's some sort of arts thing to make you think about statues. I was reading about it yesterday. Apparently there's other statues dressed up around town as well. That's the only one I've spotted, though, I have to say. On your left, Dr. Duncan's pub, great little boozer, but Dr. Duncan himself was our first chief medical officer. He told the people of Liverpool to drink beer instead of water, because the beer was distilled, so it wouldn't carry cholera or typhoid or anything like that. There are people in Liverpool still taking Dr. Duncan's advice seriously to this day. And I'm sure a few of yous will be taking Dr. Duncan's advice seriously today at some point. You may as well, you are on holiday. Now on your left, this is a great big bus station. So it's brilliant if you're a fan of bus stations. Otherwise, there's not much to say about this bit. Except that it's not just the bus station, there's lots of bars and restaurants. You've got a Yates's over there if anyone fancies. What is it, the blob or whatever that they have in the Yates's? It's like a Australian white wine and you mix it with something else. Making myself sound like an alcoholic now. The river used to flow right up to where we are right now. The River Mersey came this far inland, which is absolutely insane when you think about it. But we're spinning around. As soon as these traffic lights let us go, we'll be heading on to Victoria Street, which is named after Queen Victoria, who was very fond of Liverpool. She was very fond of anything that made her an awful lot of money. And Liverpool certainly did that. Liverpool was one of the wealthiest places in the entire world at one time. Although, at the same time, it was an extremely poor place as well. There were lots of slumlands in this area. So while a lot of the buildings that you're looking at today were being built, people were living in absolute poverty. There we are, turning right onto Victoria Street. And as we trundle along here, on the right hand side you've got the Shankly Hotel. On the left you've got the Dixie Dean Hotel. Shankly was Bill Shankly, the manager of Liverpool Football Club between 1959 and 1974. And Dixie Dean was an Everton Football Club player who scored 60 goals in a season. So again, another little reminder of just how football crazy the people of Liverpool are. I had to go bald so that I could avoid conversations with the barber about the match, because I never knew what he was talking about. If you look to your left here, you can see where the cars go down into the Mersey Tunnel. This is the tunnel that runs underneath the River Mersey. It was opened in 1934 by King George V. You can see a statue of King George V on the left-hand side of the entrance, and his wife Queen Mary, who stood as far away as possible from her husband on the other side of the road there. They've obviously had a falling out. We're coming up onto some very bumpy ground now. If everybody could please hold tight. We've only lost, I think it's 19 people this year so far. We don't want to lose anyone else. On your left, this is a World Museum, which has a planetarium, an aquarium and everything in between. There are exhibits in here on pretty much everything you could care to imagine. In fact, if you can imagine anything they don't already have an exhibit on in here, they will knock one up for you in the back while you wait. Which is very nice of them. See, Steve likes to make himself known. He's just written that on the pillar there. Steve was here. Yeah, so that's the museum, followed by the Central Library. Central Library has within it the original Victorian reading room. This is the outside of what they call the Picton reading room, just here on the left. It's absolutely beautiful inside. And a little bit further along you will see the Walker Art Gallery, a great old Victorian art gallery with exhibits from all over the world and from all different eras, known as the National Gallery of the North. Just in front of us, you got the Duke of Wellington on top of his column here, looking out towards the site of his most famous victory at the Battle of Waterloo. You must have great eyesight though, because Waterloo is in Belgium. We're coming back down the bumpy road now. It's going to be just as bumpy as when we came up the bumpy road, so please continue holding tight, ladies and gentlemen. Look at this park on your left. It's a memorial gardens. Originally though, it was a cemetery. St. John's Gardens used to be St. John's Cemetery, and then they moved most of the dead bodies to make way for the Liverpool Anglican Cathedral, and then they decided not to put that here, so they moved that whole plan and made this into a little park. But they didn't move all of the dead bodies, so think about that if you're planning on a picnic. Also, it's probably best not to bring the dog. Okay, now just outside of the gardens, look to your left here, you can see what looks like a black tin drum. This is the Hillsborough Memorial, dedicated to all those who lost their lives in the Hillsborough disaster in 1989, when 96 Liverpool football supporters were killed at Hillsborough Stadium in Sheffield. All 96 names are emblazoned on the side of the memorial itself. It's not the only memorial we have, there's one up at Anfield Stadium as well. Now Anfield and Goodison are very close to each other on either side of a park, but just a little bit out of the city centre, so you're looking at like a 3 or 4 mile, wander up that way, up the hill basically. Off in the north of the city. We're going to spin around this little roundabout here. Now if you do look like sort of to the right of me, where these cars are coming from is Scotland Road. Now hardly anyone calls Scotland Road, it's called Scotty Road here in Liverpool, and it's where the Irish settled after the potato famine, so this is the big Irish enclave of Liverpool, and it's also where Cilla Black was from. Cilla Black was a singer and television presenter, and she hailed from Scotty Road. She was Priscilla White when she lived in Scotty Road though. It was a stage name, Cilla Black. We're coming on to Dale Street now, part of the business area of town. Back when the docks were still thriving, this would have been a hustling and bustling area where all the business from the docks was done. On your right, the Ship and Mitre, which has 145 real ales, and the Excelsior here, which I don't think has quite as many real ales. But you will notice that the architecture is absolutely stunning in this particular area, and part of the reason for that is just how rich Liverpool was. Liverpool was extremely wealthy. A lot of the goods that used to go out through Liverpool's docks would be taken to Africa. Out in Africa, those goods would be swapped for people. Those people would then be transported as cargo to the New World, where they would be sold as slaves, and then the profit from that sale would then come back into the city. So Liverpool made an awful lot of its initial wealth, at least from its involvement in the international slave trade. Now obviously these buildings are a little bit later. Slavery was abolished between 1807, they abolished it in the country itself, but the effects of slavery carried on for much longer. These are mostly 20th century, late 19th century buildings, but the people who built these buildings would have been the family of those slave traders, and also they compensated the slave traders when they gave up slavery as well. So that wealth stayed within the city for a long, long time. If you want to know more about that, there's an International Slavery Museum at the Albert Dock. Tell you all about it. It's completely free to go in, and it is a whole floor of the Maritime Museum. It's not far from where we stopped the bus, basically. Here we are on North John Street. Looking over on your left now, some of you may be able to make out that there's some Beatles statues on the side of this building. This is a Hard Day's Night hotel, a Beatles themed hotel, and down this little side street here is the Cabin Club, where the Beatles played 292 times. an extremely important place in the history of rock and roll. It's just down there. But obviously it wasn't just the Beatles that played there, you know, all of the top acts of the day, all the big Mersey groups played there, including Cilla Black herself, who we mentioned before. And there is a statue of Cilla Black outside the Cavern Club. So they've put her in a sort of 60s heyday, but they've given her an 80s nose. She had a nose job in the 80s, and they've made her nose, you know, more in line with that. So we're coming up to the top of Lord Street here. On the left of us you'll see a statue of Queen Victoria in a minute. This is where Liverpool Castle used to stand. Queen Victoria from a certain angle looks more like King Victoria. I mean, she looks like a lady with a little extra, or a woman who has something a woman wouldn't normally have. Let's see if we can see what I mean. I can see it, there you go. It's disgusting that, isn't it? Right, we're on James Street now, coming towards the hotel at the bottom here. See on your right, you got the station, and then after the station is this stripy building, sometimes referred to as the Streaky Bacon building. So this building here is a Titanic themed hotel. Now, this is the original headquarters of the White Star Shipping Line. That was the company that owned the Titanic. Titanic never sailed from Liverpool. It was built in Belfast and sailed from Southampton. But most of you will have noticed that it said Liverpool on the side of the ship. So as you see it going down in the films, you always see Liverpool on the side of the ship. It's because it was registered in this building just here. So all of our Titanic connections, or most of them, sort of in some way can be traced back to this building. Lots of the crew on the Titanic were from Liverpool because it was easy to sign on for work in this particular building. The very captain of the Titanic at the time that he signed on to work on the Titanic was living in nearby Crosby and had been for about 20 years. Crosby is about 8 miles north of where we are right now. They've still got Scouse accents there, basically. You know, you're not in another completely other world. You're in nearby Sefton when you're in Crosby. And yeah, that's where Captain Smith lived. Captain Smith, possibly the worst captain in the history of shipping disasters there. Well, he missed that big iceberg anyway, didn't he? But yeah, you've got this place, and you can drink in there as well. There's a bar at the top of the hotel, and you can just make out the balcony at the top of it as well, which is quite stunning little view of the city while you're sat up there. Now, I mentioned Captain Smith living out in Crosby. Crosby's that way, so about 8 miles that way. Crosby has also got a lot of other things going for it. On Crosby Beach, they have the Iron Men, which are the Gormley statues. These are men looking out, statues of men looking out towards sea. For about 2 miles of shore, you have these statues, and they slowly get submerged by the sea when the tide comes in. It's well worth going and looking at. If you're here for a week, defo go to Crosby at some point. If you're only here for 2 days, there's plenty to see in this area. But yeah, if you're here for a long time, go and see Crosby. Now over on your right here, you've got the Docklands buildings again. We are back where we started basically at the moment, but we're not finished quite yet, because I'm taking you to see a bit of the River Mersey. I'm going to take you down the waterfront, show you a little bit of that as well. Now you might be wondering why there's canal boats on the docks as we come along here. That's because the Leeds-Liverpool canal comes right up into the city. So if you are from Leeds, you could consider swimming home, I suppose. Don't know how long it'd take you. I believe it's about 2 weeks on the actual canal boat. So, but yeah, one of the canal boats is a restaurant. You can eat on the restaurant as you go around the docks. It's called the Floating Grace. The Floating Grace. Coming up on your left here, you've got the Baltic Fleet, which is one of the only dock road pubs still surviving. Painted to look a little bit like a ship. You know, you've got the chimney stacks up there. But yeah, that's a lovely little pub if you get a chance to go there. And then on your right, you've got the Wapping Quay from 1855, which was the first of the dock buildings to be converted into apartments. Because pretty much everything along the docks has had to be converted over the years. We have very few working docks still left here in the city. You've got Garston docks out to the south and Seaforth docks out to the north of the city. Everything in between has had to find some other purpose over the years. On your left, you've got a McDonald's if you're looking for fine dining. Also a KFC if your tastes are a little bit fancier. Which way you going, Gary? You're going up. So we're going up towards the Baltic Triangle again. But we're not doubling up too much on stuff. I'm going to show you some extra things. You're just going to turn right when we get up the top here. Now you do get a lot of people who ask for directions to Abbey Road here in Liverpool. A lot of the tourists will say, which way is it to Abbey Road? Because Abbey Road is obviously synonymous with the Beatles. One of their albums was called Abbey Road. It's where they recorded all their music. But Abbey Road is in London. Abbey Road has always been in London, and there are some people who will get outraged when you tell them this, and they're quite disappointed that they're not going to, you know, be able to cross that famous zebra crossing that's on the front of the album. So just for those people, we put a little mural, a little Abbey Road mural around the corner, which I'll show you in a moment, so you can have the chance to walk across the zebra crossing if you want. Plus there's lots of zebra crossings around town if you want to just get your photograph taken on one of them. But we do get a lot of strange questions in Liverpool, you know, especially people not from the country, because I think a lot of people have got the idea that Liverpool is England, or Britain, is an extremely small place. For instance, once somebody asked me for directions to Winchester Cathedral, which is of course in Winchester and not in Liverpool. So, you know, you do get these bizarre things that people think, but I'm sure we think bizarre things when we go to other countries as well. In fact, I know we do. But yeah, we will see in just a moment that Abbey Road mural. If you want to take your photograph on the... It's a bit faded now. There it is, yeah. That lady just walked across it, didn't even seem to care. There you go, Abbey Road at 50. A few years back now that they put that there. You've also got this lovely Irish bar that opens till about 4 in the morning, or it used to anyway. 3 in the morning. And if you look to your left, at the top of this hill, you'll see the yellow submarine. So there, she blows, that yellow submarine up there. It was a real submarine that they actually used as a prop in Hunt for Red October with Sean Connery. And then somehow it's come into the hands of the people who've made a bar out of it up there. So you can go and drink on the yellow submarine. On your left is Claire's. Claire's is our oldest company, which has been here since 1748. Our oldest company is a paint makers, and in particular they make yellow paint. And that yellow paint is used for double yellow lines. So if you've ever been caught on double yellow lines, that's where the paint came from. Now I'm not sure where they make the paint for the single yellow lines, but I imagine it's a smaller building. Let's have a little look in here. Yeah, they've started. Is that guy on? I think he's just having a glass of Coke, sensible. Very sensible. I mean, on a day like this, I think you can start any time, can't you? Although you tend to finish extremely early if that happens. Now, on your right coming up, you can see the Queen's Dock, where all the water sporting events happen in Liverpool. Someone on a swan pedal over there. And on your left, you've got the Coburg Dock, which is a marina these days where rich people such as myself like to keep our boats. Unfortunately, my boat burst the other night, so I'm having to lend a puncture kit off Gary later on. I'm hoping he's brought it with him. You got it, Gary? He's not answering, he's not even listening to me. Listening to the radio, probably. Now, these are apartments here on the left. One of the residents of one of these apartments recently wrote to our company asking us to reroute the bus. He said they were fed up with people looking in through the windows. So whatever you do, don't look in through these people's windows. They simply don't like it. Ah, there's a big gang of them. You know, there's too many on those boats, isn't there? Oh, for safety, go. You know, this is the dock that people swim around usually. No swimmers in at the moment, though. And we have a long history of keep fit. I mean, just looking at us, you can tell we love our keep fit here in Liverpool. Just in front of us, you've got a statue of a jogging man, and this man is John Hulley, who brought an early version of the Olympics to Liverpool in the 1860s. There he is. Go ahead, John. You can do it. And here's the River Mersey now, lifeblood of the city. As you can see, it's a tidal river, revealing its riverbed right now. The other side of the river isn't Liverpool. The other side of the river is Birkenhead, Wallasey and New Brighton. So over there, they don't consider themselves to be Scousers. They have a slightly different accent and a completely different coloured wheelie bin. So it's just a whole new world when you go over there, basically. The best way to get across the river is, of course, the Mersey ferry, which you can see on the other side of the river now. The black and white boat just sort of poodling along is the Mersey ferry, made famous by Jerry Marsden and the Pacemakers with their 1964 hit Ferry Cross the Mersey. So yeah, lots to see over there. I mean, right up to the tip of it, you've got New Brighton. So New Brighton over there is an old Victorian seaside resort, which back in the old days was, you know, extremely impressive, and then it was very run down, and in just recent times it started to get back on its feet again, New Brighton. So they've got lots going for it again, and if you follow the peninsula all the way round, you end up in some very posh places. You end up in West Kirby and all sorts of lovely places. What's this guy doing on the river here? Just looks like he's doing donuts. What's he up to? So you can see there's a cruise ship in at the moment. Just a little bit further along, you can see a big cruise ship in. We have lots of cruise ships coming into Liverpool. One of the reasons they like it so much is because they can get straight off, and you know, they're in the city centre as soon as they get off. Most of the time, the cruise ship centres are a little bit far out of the city centre, and they end up having to get buses in. But I do believe that at the moment they're not letting them off. We haven't got anyone on board who's snuck off, have we? I believe that they're keeping them in some sort of bubbles, so they can only go on sort of, you know, excursions basically when they come off, which is a little bit upsetting for them, I suppose. They can't just venture around, but it looks like you'd have a great time on there, I think. Yeah. I mean, people say they're only for old people, those cruises, but I've wanted to go on one since I was about 19, I think. You can see the River Mersey as it flows out to the Irish Sea there. Beyond the Irish Sea is the Atlantic Ocean, so America's that way. Well, actually, America's that way. You got to go that way and then turn left, and then you just keep going for ages, and in the end you'll have to ask someone else for directions. So this is Albert Dock now. Lots of bars and restaurants in Albert Dock, and hotels as well. There's your Holiday Inn here. You know, you got lots going for it. You could just spend the whole day wandering about here, really. Especially seeing as this is where the Maritime and Slavery Museum is. It's free. And also the Tate Gallery with all your modern art, which is also free. Not free is the Beatles story, which is on your left now, but it is worth it if you're a fan of the Fab Four. Also not free is on your right, the big wheel, and also it's not going just yet, but I'll let you in on a little secret. If you prise open one of the doors on the, you know, the carriages, just get yourself in and have one of your mates spin it round. You know, you can get it for free. There it is, Liverpool's big wheel. We're coming to the end of our journey now. Here is where I always remind people that if you have enjoyed yourself today, that there is a tip jar on the way off. And that if you haven't enjoyed yourself today, that there is still a tip jar on the way off. Also, if you'd like to compliment us, please go on TripAdvisor. Remember that your guide's name was Matt and your driver's name was Gary. Although if you're complaining about us on TripAdvisor, then your guide's name was Keith and your driver's name was Olaf. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.